What's up everyone, and welcome to Channel 90. Hope you're doing well today. Today I want to go over the main canon Star Trek Captains. Now, when I say the main canon, I mean Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, and Archer. I'm not going to talk about the J.J. Abrams universe or the Discovery. So first of all, I want to preface this by saying something about the Captains as a whole, that they're all really defined by their series, and very much their personalities, their character traits are very much refined into whatever the premise of their show may have been. So Kirk is really the captain in which all the other captains are measured against. So Kirk is an explorer as he's on his 5-year mission to seek out new life and new civilizations. But in the background of Kirk's series, there is the Klingon War. So a lot of the time, Kirk is called off to deal with Klingons and resolve those conflicts. So as much as Kirk is an explorer for much of the series, he is also a military captain. He is acting within the military arm of Starfleet. And I think in the military aspect is where you really start to see Kirk's real true character. And so the thing with Kirk is that he's very much a cowboy in space. He's also very impulsive, and he's also very much a gambler. Now, a lot of the times his gambles do pay off, and I give most of this credit to the crew, and that is also where one of Kirk's biggest strengths is seen, in which Kirk really manages to pull the best out of his crew. And it's often because of his elaborate schemes that forces his crew to really kind of go above and beyond to make these things work. And it's probably why Kirk never really wanted to go much further than captain, and he liked to be a captain, because it was really much his wheelhouse. So then next we have Picard, in which Picard first and foremost is a diplomat, whereas yeah, they tried to make it seem like it was about the exploration, but it was also very much within the confines of Federation space. He flew around in the Federation flagship, putting out all the fires in the Federation, being their official representative in dealing with a lot of these situations that, of course, would arise in such an organization. Sure, there was first contact missions and trying to get people to join the Federation, and there was times where they would send them off to, patrol the neutral zone and have staring contests with Romulans and so on. But for the most part, Picard was very much, of course, a diplomat. That is really what Picard was about. And so Picard was very, calm, calculated, very strategic type of person. And so up next we have Sisko. Now, I feel that DS9 was trying to break away from the mold of the previous two series, of course, because they removed the ship and they made him stationary. So it was no longer about exploration, and it wasn't necessarily as much about diplomacy. Yes, his mission was to, of course, help the Bajorans become Federation citizens. It was also about being somewhat of a quasi-military presence to keep the Cardassians at bay, and then as the series progressed, it became the de facto forward operating base in the Dominion Wars. The series really grew over the years, and it's one of the reasons why Sisko is actually my favorite captain. And Sisko was kind of like that medium between Picard and Kirk, in which he was very reserved and very well spoken and calm and collected, but at the blink of an eye he could become one of the most impassionate and commanding people, and he gave some of the absolute best speeches. I know Picard often gets credit for being, giving these great impactful speeches and having just the right quote to give at the right time, but Sisko would often just kind of fly off the handle, but it was still a very rational rant of passion, kind of like the living embodiment of the appeal to pathos. And one of the things about Sisko that I really liked was that even though he had his principles, he wasn't defined by his principles, and he would often have to break his own moral code from time to time, because for him it was about doing what had to be done. Like, you take a look at the episode in which he had to make the decision about trying to get the Romulans to get into the war and making the deals with Garrick, and his confliction that he had with it. And the same with when trying to hunt down Eddington, and the lengths that he was going to. So the thing with Janeway is that she was the captain in the impossible position, right? Janeway's personality was that she was a scientist, and then she was forced to be more than that when Voyager got stranded in the Delta Quadrant, to make decisions that she wouldn't have had to normally make as the captain of a science vessel. She now suddenly found herself having to make the decisions of, do they interfere with the caretaker array and destroy it, thus stranding Voyager on the other side of the galaxy, or do they take the route home? Janeway, I felt, was too rigid in her principles as well, as there was many cases in which she could have gotten the crew home sooner, or at least made their trip better, but she just refused to budge on her principles, unlike, say, like Sisko would have done. And so for me, that's just one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to Janeway, this making these choices that had such negative impacts on her crew just because she refused to have to deal with moral ambiguity in her decisions. And then finally, we have Archer, who was in the very unique position of being, quote-unquote, the first captain. And so Archer was also very much an explorer, but once again, this was the premise of his entire series, that he was, in fact, the first Starfleet captain. The first Starfleet crew to really go on an extended mission and to really get out there and to explore new life and new civilization. So for him, everything that he came up against there was no precedent for. He had to come up with all of his solutions by the seat of his pants. Like, you take the situation with the Valenkians, in which they were suffering from a genetic disorder in which their race was slowly dying, and Phlox wanted to give them the technology in order to cure their disease. But then Archer decided to not help because, as he said, humanity's not out here to play God, and he, speaks of a prime directive that would be helpful. And all the other captains had all of these rules and regulations that would help them make these sorts of decisions. The thing that always bothered me the most about Archer was that he was just far too driven and far too eager to try and make a name for himself. He was almost egotistical in this sense. And, I mean, you take a look at the animosity towards the Vulcans for holding back the human race and giving friction when Archer finally decides to leave. He lets this cloud his judgment far too often and get in his way far too often. Instead of working with the Vulcans and kind of heeding some of their warnings, he just kind of makes it his personal mission to prove the Vulcans wrong, which I guess in the end kind of helps him when brokering peace with the Andorians, a mutual hatred for Vulcan condescension. But it's always just really been something that has bothered me when it comes to a lot of Archer's decisions. So there you have it. That's how I view the various Starfleet captains. I'd very much like to know how you view them. Which one do you think is the best captain and why? And so let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to having conversations with you about the various captains. And until next time, take care.